Today, we're digging into a really fascinating story about online communities. It's about how one single major political event pushed a writer to literally split their publication in two, creating a brand new, super focused space for a very specific audience. Okay, let's get into it. So, we're going to start with this really powerful statement from the author. They're talking about the term American refugee. This quote immediately tells us this isn't just about some simple blogging decision. Nope. This is a story about responding to a huge social and political shift, something that felt to them like a real necessity. So, who is the writer behind all this? Well, the whole story really starts with their unique perspective. They're a dual US-Canadian citizen, and that identity, living with a foot in both worlds, is absolutely key to understanding how we ended up with two completely different publications. Okay, so the author's original publication was called Canadian Returnee, and its whole mission was to explore what it's like to come back to Canada after living somewhere else. It was a space for thinking about identity, culture, and seeing your home country with fresh eyes. This was the starting point. Now, this first publication, it covered a lot of ground. It had everything from personal stories and cultural trends to, and this is crucial, commentary on what was happening in both Canada and the US. It was a real mix, a reflection of the author's own dual identity. But that mix, well, it was about to become a problem. So, how did this broad, all-encompassing publication get to a breaking point? Well, according to the author, one single day changed literally everything. It created a need for a completely new direction for their writing. And here it is, the catalyst. On November 6th, 2024, the author describes waking up and seeing the US election results. For them, this wasn't just another news story. It was this deeply personal, profound moment that they felt they had to respond to. And this quote, wow, it just perfectly captures the intensity of that moment. These are the author's own words. That feeling of something snapping, that's the energy that got channeled directly into their writing, and it basically transformed the Canadian Returnee publication almost overnight. So what started as a really personal outlet, it found a community, and fast. The author's writing after the election started to resonate way beyond their usual readers, and it was a clear signal that they had tapped into this big, shared feeling of concern and frustration. You can see how quickly this all evolved. It started with that gut reaction on election day, which turned into a writing outlet. Then, pretty soon, engagement just shot up, and this huge conversation started happening. But then, something really important came out of that conversation. Readers were starting to get frustrated by the mix of Canadian and American topics all in one place. And this is the real turning point. The change wasn't just the author's idea, it came directly from their community. The audience itself was basically saying, hey, we need a separate, dedicated space just to talk about the American political situation, without all the other cultural stuff from the original publication. And that feedback, it led directly to this, the creation of a brand new, laser-focused publication. It was designed from the ground up to meet the specific needs of this really engaged, really concerned group of readers. The new publication is called American Refugee. And just notice the massive shift in tone and purpose. It's not about personal rediscovery anymore. It's defined as a response to a crisis. It's made for people who feel politically displaced, which is a really powerful and specific mission. When you put them side by side, the difference is just crystal clear. On one hand, you have Canadian Returnee, which was broad and reflective. On the other, you have American Refugee, which is urgent, focused, and totally crisis-driven. They're two very different spaces, built for two very different conversations. So, why does this all matter? Well, because American Refugee was designed to be way more than just a newsletter. The whole idea was for it to be a community, a space for people who, as the author puts it, feel like outsiders in their own country. So, who is this new community really for? It's for people who share a specific mindset. They're people who feel connected to the US but are just deeply, deeply troubled by its direction. Whether they've actually had to leave the country or just feel totally alienated living within it, the publication aims to give them a place to connect. And that really brings us to our final thought. This story, it's a small example of a much, much bigger trend. It shows how shared anxieties and just a basic need for connection are building these new kinds of digital communities. And it leaves us with a pretty big question to think about. In a world that feels so fractured, how are we finding new ways to come together online to make sense of it all?